Okay, hello to all of you. Let's discuss chapter number 7. So, chapter number 7 is all about the plasma membrane, and we are going to talk about the structure of the plasma membrane, its nature, and how the transport is taking place across this membrane. So, let me go into slideshow mode. So, plasma membrane is basically plasma membrane separates a cell from its surroundings, and it is selectively permeable in nature, which means that it allows few things to it allows few things to cross through the membrane, and it does not allow few things to cross through its membrane. So few things can cross the membrane easily, and some of the things cannot cross the membrane very easily. So there are some transport proteins in the membrane which help in the crossing of some of the molecules and some of the solutes, and especially the ions. So we are going to talk about all these things. So plasma membrane is called selectively permeable, or it is called semi-permeable membrane. Now, basically, the plasma membrane is made of phospholipids, and we have already talked about what phospholipids are in our chapter number 5 when we are talking about the biomolecules. So, phospholipids, as you remember, they are amphipathic in nature, which means they have both polar and the non-polar. They have polar as well as a non-polar nature. So they have this is the phospholipids, the structure of the phospholipid. This side is the polar side, and this side is the non-polar side. So this is the polar head, and these are the non-polar tails. And we have already talked about, like, if we take a glass of water, and if we add phospholipids to the glass of water, these phospholipids, how they arrange themselves. So we have already talked about that the hydrophobic tails, they face each other. So these are the polar heads, and these are the non-polar tails. So these polar heads, they are hydrophilic in nature, and these non-polar tails, they are hydrophobic in nature. So if you take a glass of water and put these phospholipids, because water is polar in nature, these polar heads can face water, and these non-polar tails, they cannot face the water. So that is why they align like this, they arrange like this, that in a glass of water, these non-polar tails, or the hydrophobic tails, they face each other, and these polar heads are on the outside because they can face water and these cannot face water. So this is the arrangement which takes place. But we have a similar kind of thing in the plasma membrane. So so if this is the inside of the cell, this is the cytoplasm, there is a water here, and there is also water outside. So there is water on both the sides. So when the water is on the both sides, these phospholipids, they form a bilayer like this, and phospholipids are the major component of the plasma membrane. Along with that, there are other components also which we are going to talk about. So the model, so let me talk about this. So this is the structure of the plasma membrane. So you can see that these are phospholipids, and how the phospholipids, they have formed the bilayer, and in between the phospholipid bilayer are embedded the proteins. So you can see all these proteins, they are embedded here. And in the phospholipid bilayer, there is also cholesterol. So you can see the cholesterol which is embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. And also there are some sugar chains which are either attached to the lipids, or there are sugar chains which are attached to the proteins. So when the sugar chains, they are attached to proteins, they are called glycoproteins, and when they are attached to the lipids, they are called glycolipids. So these are the four components of the plasma membrane. So you can see this is the plasma membrane, and this is the inside of the cell, this is the cytoskeleton, and this is all outside the cell. And this is called extracellular matrix. So this is inside the cell, this is outside the cell, this is extracellular matrix, this is cytoplasm, and this is the plasma membrane, which is separating the cell from its surroundings. And this membrane is made of phospholipid bilayer. It's made of phospholipid bilayer, and there are some proteins embedded in the phospholipid bilayer, and there is a cholesterol which is embedded in the phospholipid bilayer, and there are sugar chains which are attached either to the lipids, and there are sugar chains which are attached to the proteins. So when the sugar chains are attached to proteins, they're called glycoproteins, and when the sugar change, they attach to lipids, they're called glycolipids. So this is the structure of the plasma membrane, and it is called fluid mosaic model. Now why it's called fluid mosaic model? Because it is it's called fluid because of these phospholipids, because these phospholipids, they are basically always moving. They are having a lateral movement. So that's why this plasma membrane is fluid in nature, because these lipids, they're always in a constant motion, and they have a lateral movement, movements. And because these proteins are embedded in the phospholipid layer, so it's called a mosaic, because there are different kinds of proteins which are embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. So that's why it's called mosaic. So so this is the structure. This is called the fluid mosaic model of the plasma membrane. And through this plasma membrane, some of the things can cross easily and some of the things cannot cross easily. So that is why this membrane is called semi-permeable membrane or selectively permeable membrane. And we are going to see very shortly why some of the things can cross the membrane easily and why some of the things cannot cross easily. So important thing to know here is that if you see the structure of the plasma membrane, these are the polar heads, and these are the non-polar tails. So this part of the membrane, you can see this part of the membrane is all hydrophobic in nature. This part of the membrane is all hydrophobic in nature. So the interior of the membrane is all hydrophobic or non-polar. So anything which is non-polar or anything which is hydrophobic can cross the membrane easily. Okay, and anything which is polar in nature cannot cross the membrane easily, and especially like ions and all that, because they are charged. So okay, so there is a difference between being polar and being charged. Charge means something which has a charge on it, and polar means when there is a unequal distribution of the charges. So there are these polar things and the non-polar things, because they are also required by the cell, so they do not cross the membrane easily, which means they do not diffuse to the membrane, but they pass the membrane with the help of some transport proteins. And these are all proteins which are embedded. They're performing different functions in the plasma membrane. So, another important thing to know is membranes are held together mainly by weak hydrophobic interactions. Most of the lipids and some proteins can move sideways within the membrane. And rarely a flip-flop takes place. Flip-flopping means when this phospholipid moves to this side, or this phospholipid moves to this side. But they can keep on, they do have a lateral movements. This is basically an experiment which shows that the membranes, they're also in lateral motion, and that they are also moving, because this is an experiment done by some scientists. That they took mouse cells and human cells and they fused the cells, and they formed the hybrid cell. In the hybrid cell, after some time, they found that all the proteins were distributed. They were all distributed after 1 hour. So you can see here, this is a cell with these proteins, this cell with these proteins, and when these two cells, they fuse with each other and form one hybrid cell, after some time all the proteins get distributed. Okay, so basically this membrane, it's very important for the membrane to stay fluid. It's very important for the membrane to stay fluid, because the transport cannot take place across the membrane if the membrane does not maintain its fluid nature. So now let's talk about what are the different arrangements in the membrane that this membrane stays fluid. Because like in winter, and there is a possibility that this membrane can become a gel. So there is a possibility in winter this membrane can become a gel and it can become solid. Or in summers, when the temperature outside is more, there is a possibility that this membrane becomes more fluid, that these molecules, they start moving very fast. These phospholipids, they start moving very fast in summer because the temperature goes up. But in either cases, whether it is cold temperature or high temperature, if the membrane does not maintain its fluid nature, then the transport can stop across the membrane. So, but this does not happen because the transport has to be maintained if the cell has to stay viable. So, what are the different arrangements in the cell? First of all, the cell has cholesterol embedded in it, as I just. So, cholesterol is embedded in the animal cells. And the function of this cholesterol is, because it is embedded in between, the function of this cholesterol is that it basically, when it is summer, when these cholesterol which is embedded, this cholesterol which is embedded in between the phospholipid bilayer, basically when it becomes when it is summer and the temperature becomes very high, these phospholipids can move very, very fast because there is a cholesterol sitting in between the phospholipid bilayer. This cholesterol, it actually interferes with the movement of these phospholipids because it's sitting in between. And when the temperature becomes very cold outside, when it is winter, these phospholipids, they can actually form a gel. They can actually freeze, and their movement can become slow. But again, because of the presence of cholesterol, which is present in between the phospholipid layer, it again prevents the freezing. So that's the function of cholesterol, that it acts as the fluidity buffer. Because it's sitting in between the phospholipid bilayer, it does not let this phospholipid bilayer to become solid when it is winter, and it also does not let the phospholipids to move very fast when it is summer. And also there's a kind of a evolutionary adaptation in some plants, that in winter the composition of the unsaturated fatty acids increase in the plants. So when it is winter, the temperature becomes very low. There's a possibility that this membrane can become a gel. But what happens is, it's a kind of a evolutionary adaptation, that in these plants, the composition of the unsaturated fatty acids, increase in them. And unsaturated fatty acids, you can see their structure. There are bends in their structures. This we have already discussed in chapter number 5, that there are bends in the structures. And because of that, these bends or the kinks in the structures, you can see these phospholipids, they cannot stack on each other. They cannot stack on each other. And as a result of that, the membrane cannot become gel. It cannot freeze. So the fluidity is maintained, and the plasma membrane, it keeps on functioning. So this is all what I just said. I'm not going to repeat it. You can go over that. Okay, now we are going to talk about the membrane proteins and their functions. So the proteins which are embedded in the membrane, they can be peripheral proteins or they can be integral proteins. So let me go back into this picture, and I would like to show you here. In the fluid mosaic model, you can see this is the phospholipid bilayer, and these are the different proteins embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. And these are some of the proteins which are outside the phospholipid bilayer. This is the protein. So the proteins which are outside the phospholipid bilayer, these proteins are called peripheral proteins. They're called peripheral proteins because they are at the periphery of the plasma membrane. And there are some proteins which are embedded in the membrane. These are called integral proteins. Like all of these are integral proteins. So this is an integral protein, this is an integral protein, because they're spanning the membrane. So the proteins which span the membrane, they're called integral proteins. But there are different kinds of integral proteins. Like you can see that this is one integral protein. It's a part of the membrane, but it is not crossing both layers of the phospholipid. So, but there are some proteins like this, or this. They are crossing both the layers of the phospholipid bilayer. So these proteins are called transmembrane proteins. So transmembrane proteins are those proteins which cross both the layers of the phospholipid bilayer. So peripheral proteins, integral proteins, and the transmembrane proteins. The hydrophobic region of the integral protein, because integral protein is a part of the plasma membrane and the interior of the plasma membrane is all hydrophobic. So the hydrophobic region of the integral protein, which means if this is the phospholipid bilayer, so if this is the phospholipid bilayer, these are the polar heads. These are the polar heads. These are the hydrophobic tails. So this is the integral protein. Okay, this is the phospholipid bilayer. This is the protein. So this part of the protein. So this part of the protein, which is crossing the membrane, is rich in hydrophobic amino acids. Okay, because this part of the protein is crossing the hydrophobic core of the plasma membrane. So the hydrophobic regions of the integral protein consists of one or more stretches of non-polar amino acids, often coiled into alpha helices. So you can see that this is all this part which is the part of the protein which is crossing the interior core of the membrane is all rich in hydrophobic amino acids, and they have alpha helix in them. And these are the different functions which are performed by the proteins which are there in the plasma membrane. They help in transport, enzymatic activity, signal transduction, cell-to-cell recognition, intercellular joining, and the attachment to the cytoskeleton and the extracellular matrix. Let me show you here. So these are the proteins which are embedded in the membrane, and this is the function as a transport protein. So these proteins are called channel proteins. You can see that how they are providing a channel for the entry of some solutes, and these are called carrier proteins. And carrier proteins are those proteins to which the different solutes actually go and bind, and after the binding the shape of the protein changes and it delivers the protein, it delivers the solutes inside the cell. So these are transport proteins. These are some of the proteins which have enzymatic activity in them. So these are some of the proteins which act as enzymes. These are some of the proteins which act as receptors, that they receive the signals from the environment, and then they activate other proteins inside the cell, and these proteins are all involved in the process called signal transduction. Cell-to-cell recognition, these proteins which are there in the plasma membrane, embedded in the plasma membrane, also help in cell-to-cell recognition. So the two different cells, they can recognize each other through these proteins. Intercellular joining, so the proteins, these two different cells, they basically they are joined to each other through these membrane proteins, and also these membrane proteins help in the these proteins they basically help in binding to the extracellular matrix, as well as they also help in binding to the attachment to the cytoskeleton. So these are all different functions of the membrane proteins. And this is one example which shows the importance of the membrane proteins. So this is a HIV virus. So it attacks the lymphocytes, and to attack the T lymphocytes, they have to bind to a receptor, which is a CD4 receptor, and also a co-receptor called CCR5. So the virus has to attach to two receptors. One is a CD4 receptor and another is a CCR5 receptor. So if this virus doesn't bind to the co-receptor, then the virus cannot adhere to the cells. So there are some people who are resistant to AIDS, and it has been found that they do not have this co-receptor. They do not have the CCR5, which is a co-receptor. So this virus cannot attack these people because they do not have this receptor, and this receptor is a membrane protein. So that shows the importance of the membrane proteins. And also, as we talked about, these proteins and the lipids which are there in the plasma membrane, they are also these proteins and lipids are also attached with some sugar chains. And if the proteins are attached with sugar chains, they're called glycoproteins, and if the lipids they are attached with the sugar chains, they're called glycolipids. Proteins, glycoproteins, and lipids, if they have sugar chains, they're called glycolipids. Now, cells recognize each other by binding to molecules often containing carbohydrates on the extracellular surface of the plasma membrane. So here you can see this is one cell, this is second cell. So one cell, second cell, and this is a glycoprotein. So this cell is going to recognize this cell through the glycoprotein which is present on this cell. So that's the importance of the carbohydrates in the plasma membrane. Now, membranes, they have basically they have an asymmetric distribution of proteins, lipids, and the associated carbohydrates in them, and it is all how the membrane is built. So this is basically this is the endomembrane system, which we have already discussed in chapter number 6. This is the ER. You know that in the ER there's a rough ER as well as there's a smooth ER. In the smooth ER are made the in the smooth ER are made the lipids, and in the rough ER are made the proteins. And these proteins and lipids, they are not fully made in the ER. They need to go to Golgi apparatus, where they get more modified, like the addition of sugar chains that takes place in the Golgi apparatus, and further folding and more modifications takes place in the Golgi apparatus, and then they move towards the membrane. So you can see here, it's shown here that this is a glycoprotein. So you can see this is a transmembrane glycoprotein. Basically the process of glycosylation, it actually initiates in the ER and then it continues in the Golgi. So you can see this is the vesicle which is formed, and this is the glycoprotein, and these vesicles they move towards the Golgi and they get fused with the Golgi and they further get modified here. So this is the Golgi apparatus, and this is the, you can see this is the glycoprotein, and this is the glycolipid. So this is a vesicle. This is a vesicle with glycolipid as well as glycoprotein. And you can see how this vesicle is moving towards the plasma membrane, and this vesicle is actually becoming the part of the plasma membrane. And this is the way how glycolipids and the glycoproteins, they are embedded in the plasma membrane. So we have already discussed the nature of the plasma membrane, that plasma membrane is selectively permeable. So the interior core of the membrane is all hydrophobic. So anything which is non-polar or hydrophobic can cross the membrane easily. And anything which is hydrophilic, which includes ions or polar things, they do not cross the membrane easily. And there are proteins which are embedded in the membrane which help in the transport. So transport proteins allow the passage of hydrophilic substances across the membrane. So these transport proteins can be channel proteins or they can be carrier proteins. So channel proteins, they basically provide a kind of a channel through which the molecules and ions can cross. And aquaporins, these are basically typical example of channel proteins through which passage of water takes place. So channel proteins, they provide a kind of a hydrophilic channel through which certain molecules and ions can pass. And transport proteins are the other transport proteins are called carrier proteins, and they're called carrier proteins. And some of the solutes, they actually bind to these carrier proteins. So some of the solutes actually bind to the carrier proteins, and when these solutes they bind to the carrier proteins, the shape of the carrier proteins actually changes, and in that shape they cannot keep on binding to these solutes, and when the shape changes, they actually transport the material or these molecules inside the cell. And these transport proteins are specific for the substance it moves. Okay, before we go and talk about some of these processes, before we talk about these transport proteins, we need to talk about some of the, we are going to talk about the specific transport mechanisms which takes place across the membrane. So first is the diffusion. So diffusion is basically when the molecules move from high concentration to lower concentration. So diffusion is a process in which the molecules they move from high concentration to the lower concentration. So this is a process, this is a passive process because molecules are moving from high concentration to lower concentration. So they are moving down the concentration gradient. So this process does not need any energy. So that's why diffusion is a passive transport. So here is example. If you take a glass of water and you add some dye, you will see that initially you will see one droplet of, suppose you have a glass of water and you add a dye drop, a blue dye drop. Initially there will be a drop of blue dye, and then eventually you will see that drop of dye is going to all diffuse out. So here you can see that these are the molecules of dye. They are in high concentration here, and slowly they diffuse, which means the molecules of dye will move from high concentration to lower concentration, and they will all spread out. So this is basically showing if there is one dye, and this is basically showing if there are more than one solute. So the concentration of this kind of solute is more on this side, and slowly they will move from this side to this side, and they will all become uniform. And this is a second solute. This is second solute. So the concentration of the molecules is more on this side, and after some time you will see that these molecules are going to move from this side to this side. So eventually the concentration of both the solutes on both sides become the same. So this is process called diffusion. Okay, so diffusion is a passive transport because here the molecules move down the concentration gradient. No energy is required in this process. Next term is osmosis. Osmosis is a specialized kind of diffusion. It's a diffusion of water molecules from high concentration to low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules. It's a specialized term. Osmosis is a specialized term. So osmosis is a specialized term which is used for the diffusion of water molecules, from high concentration to low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So here is one example of osmosis. Here you can see this is a U-shaped tube, and here is a semi-permeable membrane. So on this side you can see this is the concentration of solutes, and on this side this is the concentration of solutes. So the concentration of solutes is less on this side, and the concentration of solutes is more on this side. So when the concentration of solutes is less on this side, which means there is a more concentration of water on this side, and if there is a high concentration of solutes on this side, which means there is a less concentration of water on this side. So osmosis is the movement of water molecules from high concentration to lower concentration through semi-permeable membrane. So in this U-shaped tube, which is separated by a semi-permeable membrane, there is more concentration of water on this side as compared to this side. So the water is going to move from this side to this side. So you can see the water is going to move from this side to this side, and you can see because of that the water level rises on this side. Okay, so because of this the water moves from this side to this side, and as a result of that the water level rises on this side. So this is a process of osmosis, and it is taking place through this semi-permeable membrane. So this semi-permeable membrane allows the movement of water molecules, but it does not allow the movement of these solutes. Okay, so as a result of that, when water moves from this side to this side, it causes the equal concentration of the solutes on both sides. So it's a movement of water molecules which causes the distribution of these solutes equal on the both sides. So this is the process of osmosis. So now we're going to talk about tonicity, which is the ability of surrounding solution to cause a cell to gain or lose water. So before we talk about that, we need to talk about few terms, isotonic solution, hypertonic solution, or hypotonic solution. So these terms are very relative terms. Okay, so hypertonic solution is that solution. So it's always in these terms are always talked about in comparison. So a hypertonic solution is that solution which is hypertonic when we compare it to some other solution. So hypertonic solution is that solution which has a higher concentration of solutes in it when you compare it with some other solution. Hypotonic solution is that solution which has a less concentration of solutes in it when we compare it to some other solution. And isotonic solutions are those solutions when we compare them to each other and they have equal concentration of solutes in them. Those solutions are called isotonic solutions. So very important to know these are relative terms and they are always in comparison to two solutions. Now, for example, very typical example I would like to give you here is, like, suppose if you have three different kinds of waters. If you have like a tap water, seawater, and the deionized water which is used in the labs. So if you compare seawater with the tap water, okay, if you compare the seawater with the tap water, so seawater has a lot of salts in it. So we will say, if we are comparing seawater with the tap water, we will say that seawater is hypertonic and tap water is hypotonic, because seawater has more solutes as compared to the tap water. So seawater is hypertonic and seawater is hypertonic and the tap water is hypotonic. But if we make the comparison now of tap water and the deionized water. Now in the deionized water, it has very less salts. Deionized water is that water which is used in the labs for doing some experiments. It's also called distilled water or double distilled water, because all the ions they have been separated from that water. So if we compare tap water with the deionized water, then the tap water has more ions or salts as compared to deionized water. So in this comparison, tap water is hypertonic, tap water is hypertonic as compared to deionized water, and deionized water is hypotonic. So you can see that how the definition changes. So it's all what we are comparing with. So these are some examples of, these are animal cells, these are plant cells, and how the cells lose or gain water when they are placed in hypertonic, hypotonic, or the isotonic solution. So the animal cells, when they're placed in hypertonic solution, which means outside, so now in this case, when the animal cell is in the hypertonic solution, now the comparison is of the solution which is there in the cytoplasm of the cell as well, and this comparing solution is the hypertonic solution. So the hypertonic solution is that solution which has a high salts in it. So it means that if we say the cell is in a hypertonic solution, which means that the solution which is outside the cell has more salts as compared to the salts in the cytoplasm. So in that situation, what is going to happen? If outside the cell, the solution which is there, which is hypertonic, outside in that solution, if there are more salts, it means water is going to be less outside. It means water is going to be more inside. So there will be more water inside. So the osmosis is going to take place from inside of the cells to outside the cells, which means the water is going to move from the inside of cells to the outside of the cells. So when the water moves from inside of the cells to outside of the cells, they lose water, they shrink. So similarly, when the cell is in a hypertonic solution, when the cell is in a hypertonic solution, which means there is more water outside, the water is going to move inside the cell. So when the water moves inside the cell is going to burst and it is eventually going to lyse. And if the cell is in an isotonic solution, there is going to be equal movement of water inside and outside, and as a result of that, there is not going to be net movement of water molecules. There is not going to be net movement of the water molecules. So this is basically the animal cells. So animal cells, remember that they do not have the cell wall. So this is the way how they are when they are placed in different kinds of solutions. Now this is a plant cell. This is a plant cell, and the plant cells, they have a cell wall around them. So when the plant cells, so they have a kind of a more protection. So when the plant cells, they are placed in hypertonic solution, all the cytoplasm, because they lose water, all the cytoplasmic contents, they get they shrunk. So in that situation, we call the cell is plasmolysed. And when these plant cells are placed in isotonic solution, so there is an equal movement of water inside and outside, the cell is called flaccid. And when the cells, they are placed in hypotonic solution, so which means that the cells are gaining water, but remember that inside the plant cells there is a central vacuole which stores a lot of water, and also the plant cells, they have a cell wall. So the water which is getting stored into the central vacuole, that puts pressure on the pressure on the cell wall, and the cell wall puts pressure on the inside of the wall also puts the pressure, and that's called the turgor pressure. And in this situation we call the plant cells, they are turgid. So this is the difference between plant cells and animal cells, that the plant cells do not get lysed but rather easily as compared to the animal cells, because animal cells, they do not have the cell wall, but the plant cells, they have a cell wall, so they are turgid in the hypotonic solutions. So osmoregulation, it is basically it's a process in which some of the organisms, they can actually control they can control this movement of water molecules inside their cell. So osmoregulation, the control of solute concentrations and water balance, it's basically a necessity for the adaptation of life in some environments. For example, the unicellular eukaryote called Paramecium, which is hypertonic to its pond water environment, has a contractile vacuole that acts as a pump. So that basically because it is hypertonic, so it means that the outside environment is hypotonic, so which means that it can get a lot of water inside. So so if a lot of water comes inside, this organism can burst, but they have a contractile vacuole which helps in the pumping of water outside the cell, and this vacuole is called contractile vacuole, and this is so this contractile vacuole helps in pumping the water outside the cell, and this is the way they maintain the water inside them, and this process is called osmoregulation. So this is all what I just explained. So a plant cell in hypotonic solution swells until the wall opposes uptake, and the cell is now turgid. In hypotonic environment, the plant cells, they lose water and they are called plasmolysed. Okay, so basically diffusion and osmosis, it's a passive transport, because in diffusion and osmosis is actually a specialized form of diffusion. It's a passive transport because here the molecules and the solutes are moving from high concentration to lower concentration, and when the molecules move from high concentration to lower concentration, when they move along the gradient, they do not need energy because they're moving along the gradient, and this process is called passive transport. And second kind of passive transport we are going to talk about is called facilitated diffusion. So facilitated diffusion is a diffusion which means that the molecules move from high concentration to lower concentration, but they move through, or they move with the help of the transport proteins. Okay, so the transport proteins are channel proteins or the carrier proteins. So that is what the facilitated diffusion is. So I can explain you here basically. So this is a channel protein. So you can see that this protein has a kind of channel inside it, and the molecules can move from high concentration to lower concentration. Molecules can move from high concentration to lower concentration through this channel protein. So this channel protein forms a kind of a channel inside it, and these channels, they are actually lined with the hydrophilic amino acids. And this is a carrier protein. So these carrier proteins, they have a shape. They have a shape so that these molecules or these solutes can actually bind. So in this, they actually bind to the protein, and when these molecules, they actually bind to, when these molecules or solutes, they actually bind to these proteins, their shape changes. You can see this protein has a shape like this, and when this molecule binds to this protein, its shape changes and it becomes like this, and it becomes like this, and then it releases the solute inside. These are carrier proteins. So so the process of facilitated diffusion is a diffusion process. So it is also passive transport. It is also passive transport which does not require energy. Here also molecules move from high concentration to lower concentration. They move along the gradient, but they move with the help of the transport proteins. So aquaporins, they are special channel proteins. They are the channel proteins which help in the transport of water molecules. And there are some ion channels. They facilitated the transport of ions, and some of the ion channels are called gated channels because they open and close in response to the stimulus. For example, in nerve cells, ion channels open in response to electrical stimulus. So these are all channel proteins. So these are channel proteins and these are carrier proteins. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here and I'm going to record active transport in second video.